For more on Cuba-Mexico relations, I'm joined by Peter Hakim here in the studio. He's President Emeritus and Senior Fellow at Inter-American Dialogue. Peter, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
So let's talk about the significance of Raul Castro's trip to Mexico. This is a big deal.
Well, it is a big deal because Mexico has been the one country in all of Latin America that never broke relations with Cuba, that never put on an economic embargo on Cuba. So there is a special relationship between the two countries. But, you know, the big problem is with all the talk of economic cooperation, Mexico has been cooperating with Cuba for many years now. There's been highs and lows. Basically, it depends on the Cuban economy. The Cuban economy has to have the resources to buy goods from Mexico in return for Mexico, whether it's installing infrastructure or shipping goods to Cuba. And that's Cuba's big problem.
But Peter, relations between the two sides hasn't always been that great. In fact, in 2000, when Vicente Fox took office, things weren't that great. Explain that history and why things got a little tense.
Well, first of all, that Mexico, until Fox's election, had been ruled by a single party for 70 years, the party that had maintained relationships with Cuba. Vicente Fox was from a more conservative party that was seeking stronger relations with the United States. But at the same time, his foreign minister at the time was very open to a relationship with Cuba. But they had their disagreements. I think the Cubans expected more from Mexico, and Mexico was also trying to really build a very strong relationship with the United States at the time. And the two, particularly after President Bush assumed power, were never compatible.
So how much do you think this visit sort of happened because of normalization of relations between Washington and Havana? Did that have anything to do with this visit?
It might have. I mean, in some ways it might have, because in many respects the Mexicans are helping the U.S. To suggest a meeting with Raul Castro shouldn't be considered so special. Heads of state meet all the time, particularly heads of state that are in countries that are so close together, have such a long history, and that the Pope visiting Cuba, Cuba visiting the Mexican president. But remember, Raul Castro was well integrated into Latin America. He was head of the community of Latin American nations for the past 6 months. So it's not a sort of big jump. It's a good, solid step, but nothing basically to write home about.
Understood. And we talked about areas of agreement. Obviously, they want to strengthen business ties. Do you see areas of disagreement on the table?
No, I don't think there's much disagreement now between Mexico and Cuba. I don't think it's going to make a big difference.
Any major announcements?
No, I suspect not. The Mexicans are in no condition to provide any kind of aid. Maybe some help with oil exploration. The Cubans continue to have this vision that there must be some oil at some place within Cuba territorial waters or close enough to Cuba for Cuba to claim it. But at this point, Mexico doesn't have the resources, and by and large, Cuba doesn't produce enough to really make it an attractive partner for Mexico. Mexico really wants partners like the US, Canada, Brazil, that really are able to purchase Mexican goods.
We will leave it at that. Peter Hakim, thank you so much, sir, for your time.